We're in Book 6, the Book of Fate. And last week we were reading in the first section about Narad visiting King Aswapati in his palace and singing to the king and the queen wonderful songs. So we'll continue from there after the break on page 418. Even as he sang and rapture stole through earth-time and caught the heavens, came with a call of hooves as of her swift heart hastening Savitri. Her radiant tread glimmered across the floor, a happy wonder in her fathomless gaze, changed by the halo of her love she came, her eyes rich with a shining mist of joy, as one who comes from a heavenly embassy discharging the proud mission of her heart, one carrying the sanction of the gods to her love and its luminous eternity. She stood before her mighty Father's throne, and eager for beauty on discovered earth, transformed and new in her heart's miracle light, saw like a rose of marvel worshipping the fire-tinged sweetness of the Son of Heaven. He flung on her his vast, immortal look. His inner gaze surrounded her with its light, and raining back knowledge from his immortal lips, he cried to her, "Who is this that comes, the bride, the flame-born, and round her illumined head pouring their lights, her hymeneal pomps move flashing about her? From what green glimmer of glades, retreating into dewy silences, or half-seen verge of waters, moon betrayed, bringst thou this glory of enchanted eyes? Earth has gold-hued expanses, shadowy hills that cowl their dreaming phantom heads in night, and guarded in a cloistral joy of woods, screened banks sink down into felicity, seized by the curved, incessant, yearning hands and ripple passion of the upgazing stream. Amid cool-lipped murmurs of its pure embrace, they lose their souls on beds of trembling reeds. And all these are mysterious presences in which some spirit's immortal bliss is felt, and they betray the earth-born heart to joy. There hast thou paused, and marveling borne eyes unknown, or heard a voice that forced thy life to strain its rapture through the listening soul? Or if my thought could trust this shimmering gaze, it would say thou hast not drunk from an earthly cup, but stepping through azure curtains of the noon, thou wast surrounded on a magic verge in brighter countries than man's eyes can bear. Assailed by trooping voices of delight, and seized mid a sunlit glamour of the boughs in fairy woods, led down the gleaming slopes of Gandhamadan where the Apsaras roam, thy limbs have shared the sports which none has seen, and in God haunts thy human footsteps strayed. Thy mortal bosom quivered with God's speech, and thy soul answered to a word unknown. What feet of gods, what ravishing flutes of heaven have thrilled high melodies round, from far, near and far approaching through the soft and reveling air, which still surprised thou hearest. They have fed thy silence on some red, strange, ecstatic fruit, and thou hast trod the dim moon peaks of bliss. So very rich poetry here. Rosa, you will begin? Yes.
Even as he sang and raptures told through earth time and caught the heavens came with a call of
Hooves.
hooves, as of her swift heart hastening Savitri. Her radiant tree glimmered across the floor.
So, as he was singing, while he was still singing, even as he sang, and as his song was having its magical effect, there's rapture, intense delight, pervading like a perfume, spreading through time, and even floating up and catching the heavens, that intense delight of hearing the song of Narad. As he was singing and as all this was happening, there's a sound of hooves, horses coming, the sound of the horses of her chariot. And Sri Aurobindo says that sound of the beating of the hooves, it's like the beating of Savitri's heart. She's in a hurry to come. Her swift heart hastening. She's hurrying. And here she is, she arrives. Her shining tread, radiant, shining with light, glimmered across the floor. Here, Sri Aurobindo in several places speaks about the Savitri's feet and the moon gold feet and the way that they shine on those marble floors of the palace. Ganga Lakshmi?
changed by the halo of her love she gave. Her eyes rich with a shining mist of joy, as one who comes from a heavenly embassy, discharging the proud mission of her heart, one carrying the sanction of the God to her love and its luminous eternity. She stood before her mighty Father's throne, and eager for beauty undiscovered earth, transform anew in her earth's miracle light, so like a rose of marble worshipping the fire-tinged sweetnesses of the soul of human.
So first he describes Savitri. What does she look like? There's a happy wonder. She can scarcely believe she's so happy, no? In her fathomless gaze, that deep gaze. And those who see her recognize that she's changed. And Sri Aurobindo tells us it's like she's got a halo, a shining light around her. This is the light that this meeting with Shraddhavan and falling in love with him has lit up her whole being. No? Her eyes, it's as if they've got a shining mist, a mist of joy, of happiness. And he says she comes like one who has been sent, one who comes from an embassy. An ambassador is somebody who's sent, no? Who has a mission. So it's as if she's coming with a heavenly embassy. She's bringing some wonderful news, and coming now to her father, she's going to discharge, she's going to fulfill that mission, the proud mission of her heart. She's so proud and happy to share with him. And she feels that she's coming as one who is carrying the sanction of the gods. This is a strange word, this word sanction, because it has two absolutely opposite meanings. No? The UN wants to put sanctions against a country in order to punish them, to say, no, you are doing everything wrong. But the word also means, you ask for the sanction of somebody in authority to say yes. No? This is, here she's carrying the sanction. The gods have said yes to her love and to its luminous eternity. So there she stood before her mighty Father's throne. And he's a king, he's sitting in his throne with all his power. And then she sees the fire-tinged sweetness of the Son of Heaven. She sees Narad there. She hadn't expected to see him. And she's in a mood where she is eager for beauty. She's very ready to perceive beauty anywhere, anywhere on this discovered earth. Before she had just lived in her father's palace. Now she's been out traveling for a full year. She's discovered the earth. She's discovered her love. So she is transformed. She herself is new, and she sees everything as transformed and new in this light of her heart. Her heart, I think that happens when we just first fall in love, that we see things in a very bright and beautiful way. No? So she sees Narad, and she sees him like a rose. She feels worship for this remarkable being who is there with her parents. Fire-tinged sweetness. There's a sweetness, but there's also that fire of intensity and of will is there. Okay, you'd like to read, Bhavana?
He flung on her his most immortal look. His inner gaze surrounded her with its light, and draining back knowledge from his immortal lay, he cried to her, "Who is this that comes, the bride, the flame born, and round her illumined head, holding their lights, her hymeneal forms, move flashing about her."
Let's pause there. So he, Narad, he looks at her, his vast, immortal look, and he sees her with his inner eyes. His inner gaze surrounded her with its light. But he speaks as if he doesn't know, who she is, or, yes, where she's been. He reins back knowledge from his lips. He doesn't speak out the knowledge that he gets from that inner look. To rein back, reins are the leather thongs that we use to control a horse. So if you want the horse to stop, you rein it back, you hold it back. So he's holding his knowledge back. He doesn't let it come out in his words. Instead, he asks a lot of questions. So he asks, who is this? Who is coming? But immediately he says, she looks like a bride. He sees her as flame-born, somebody who's been born from the fire. That's that brightness, that shining intensity which she carries with her. And he says, around her head is full of light, because flashing around her, her hymeneal pomps. Hymen is the goddess of marriage. So your hymeneal pomps, a bride always is dressed in a special glorious way, and around there will be all kinds of lights and jewels. And so in a subtle way, he sees Savitri lit up like that. Pomps, this is what has to do with a ceremony, something serious. So all this is kind of flashing around her head. And then he asks where she has been. She, if you would read.
From what green glimmer of glades, retreating into dewy silences, a half-seen bird of water's moon betrayed, brings thou this glory of enchanted eyes.
So you must have been somewhere very beautiful. A green glimmer of glades. A glade is a kind of opening in the forest, in the wood, an open space where the sun can pour in and light up the green of the leaves. And those glades perhaps are around the edges, they are dissolving in these dewy silences under the trees where it's very quiet, and there's humidity, dew is that, so they will be cool under the trees. So is it something like that, glades in the forest, or perhaps you've glimpsed some water, some lake or a river, lit up by the moon. One wouldn't be able to see it, but the moon has shone on it, and so we can see that half-seen verge of waters. Perhaps you've been on the shore of some lake or some river like that. And you're bringing now this glory of enchanted eyes to us, that we can see. So tell us where you have been. But then, before he allows her to speak, this happens sometimes in poetry, he himself has a lot to say. He asks the question, and he absolutely wonderful descriptions of the magical scenes she might have experienced in the forest, in the mountains. So I think we'll have to break it up a bit. Just to the bottom of the page, please, Joel, to the colon. No, actually you can go to the end of the sentence, Joel.
Earth has gold-hued expanses, shadowy hills, that hold their dreaming phantom heads in night, and guarded in a claustral joy of woods, stream banks sink down into felicity, seized by the curved, incessant, yearning hands, and ripple passion of the upgazing stream. Amid cool-lipped murmurs of its pure embrace, they lose their souls on beds of trembling reeds.
So this is a wonderful image, no? First of all, he speaks about Earth, the beauty of Mother Earth, golden-colored spaces, but also shadowy hills that wear as if a hood, a cowl is a hood. So the shadowy hills, they cover their heads in darkness. They are dreaming phantom heads. Their heads are somehow ghostly. We can't see them clearly. But they often, hills, when we see them in a certain light, it seems that they are dreaming, sleeping. And on the sides of those hills, in the woods, guarded by a cloistral joy of woods. A cloister is an enclosed space. It's particularly the enclosed garden in the center of a monastery. And the people who live in the monastery are not supposed to go outside, but they can enjoy this very private, secluded, protected place in the center of the monastery. So that's a cloister. So he says those secluded, private places in the woods, protected, guarded. There are banks, river banks, or the banks of streams, screened. They're protected. We don't see, or not everybody sees them. They are hidden. They sink down into felicity, into happiness. The happiness of being touched by the hands of the stream. He says the stream clutches at those lovely curving banks with these ripple hands, the curved, incessant hands. The stream keeps clutching at the bank because it wants to touch, it wants to enjoy. And this stream of water is looking up at the lovely banks. It's in love with them. and it expresses its passion in the form of these ripples. There's lovely little waves, and which touch the banks, and the banks slip down amid the cool-lipped murmurs of its pure embrace. That's the stream embracing the banks, no? And the touch of the stream is like a cool kiss, no? Or a cool, there's also the sound that the stream makes. The banks just get dissolved. They lose their souls on beds of trembling reeds. Along the edge of the stream, there are the reeds, these water plants that grow. So it's a kind of image of falling in love, no? Yeah. Sergei.
And all these are mysterious presences in which some spirits immortal bliss is held, and they betray the earthborn heart to joy.
So the golden spaces, the cloistral woods, the banks, the stream, all these, they really have some presence in them. They are not just purely material things, mysterious presences. And in the presence, in those beautiful places, some immortal spirit bliss is felt. And when the human being, the earth heart, comes into those places, they get enticed to share that joy. They betray the earth-born heart to joy, just can't help feeling that special delight. So then he asks her, Mahalingam,
There thou pass, and marveling both eyes, unknown, or heard a voice that forced thy light to strain its rapture through the listening soul.
So he says, have you paused, have you rested in some space like that? And perhaps there somebody has seen you, you have met somebody, you have borne somebody you didn't know, the eyes of somebody you didn't know, and you've marveled, you've felt wonder and delight at that. And perhaps you've heard a voice who has woken up some kind of deep rapture in you, forced your life parts to strain its rapture through thy listening soul. Maybe the soul is passive, listening, watching, but then this earthly delight, this human emotion, has to be strained as if to be purified, passing through the soul. So he says it as a question. Yeah. You like to read? Gentleman in front, would you like to read?
I said,
Yes.
oh, my thought would trust this disseminating gate. You could say that has not drunk from any exile. Full stagnant thought hazard certain of the moon. To west surrender on a magic way. In brightly countries than man's eyes can bear.
Yes. So, but then he says, perhaps it's all that, but if my thought, if my mind can trust, can have confidence in this shimmering gaze, in this look that's full of light, that's in your eyes, my thought would say that it's not from any earthly cup of delight that you have drunk. Hmm? You've been somewhere else. You've been into another world. You have stepped through azure curtains of the noon. Sometimes there's something magical about the noontime, the hottest time of day. Even in our European mythologies, sometimes people slip into fairyland at noontime. And here it is something like that, as if the sky, when it's so intensely blue, is like a great curtains, and you've passed through those curtains into another world, into brighter countries. And there you've been surrounded by the people who belong to those countries on that magic verge. A verge is a borderline or a frontier, an edge. No? There these beings have come in those countries that are brighter than our physical eyes can see. So then he describes something about those other countries. At the back, Mom, would you like to read?
Assailed by drooping voices of delight and saved neither the sunlit glamour of the doors in fairy woods led down the gleaming slopes of Gandhamardan where the Apsaras roam. Two limbs have shared the sports which none has seen, and in both hands through human footsteps strayed, to mortal bosom quivered with God's speech, and to soul answered to a word unknown.
Yes. So assailed means attacked, actually, being besieged. Trooping voices. So many beings, these subtle beings, but they have beautiful voices, and they are offering delight. And these beings have caught hold of you. They've seized you in this sunlit glamour, this enchantment of the boughs. These are the branches. In fairy woods, you notice the spelling of this word. There are two ways of spelling the word fairy in English. And this one is much more poetic, with this E spelling. Fairies, we may not take them very seriously, but when it's fairy like this, it's magical. And those beings have led you down these gleaming, shining slopes, these hills of Mount Gandhamardan. And that's the mountain of the Gandharas, the musicians and poets and dancers and singers. The Gandharvas, yes. So they are beings of the subtle realm, but they inspire our music and our art and poetry. And he says that those are the hillsides where the Apsaras roam. The Apsaras, the heavenly dancers. So you in your earthly body, you have shared in their sports, in their play, in their dances and their enjoyments, which none of us have seen. And your human footsteps have wandered there in God haunts, in places where divine beings move. And even your bosom, your heart has quivered. You have heard God speech. And your soul has responded to a new word, a word with the capital W. So a powerful, creative word. Some magic like that has happened to you, he says. Dhanalakshmi?
What heat of gods, what ravishing fruits of heaven, have thrilled high melodies from near and far, approaching through the soft and riverine air, which still surprised the hearers.
Yes. So tell us about it. What about those divine feet and those wonderful flutes, like Krishna's flutes? So the sound is so beautiful, it ravishes you, carries you away with delight. And thrilled high melodies around the music of those Gandharvas. And they are a bit elusive. You don't hear them or see them all at once. They seem to be in the distance, and then they come nearer, and you follow them, and then they're further away. So from near and far, approaching through the soft and reveling air. A revel is a time of joyful celebration, a party, a celebration. So there they are at their revels. They're expressing their delight.
Bhavan is in subtle physical or
He says subtle physical, yes. Yes. So he says, but you're still hearing those melodies. No? You're surprised, astonished by them. They're still echoing in your inner ear. Tell us about them. Till?
They have felt thy silence and some rare strange ecstasy through, and thou hast trod the dim moon peaks of bliss.
So, strength, sweetness, intensity, and silence. These are the qualities of Savitri. And now he says those beings, those Gandharvas and Apsaras, they have given you something to eat, some beautiful red fruit which gives a strange ecstasy. And you have trod the dim moon peaks of bliss. In the Indian tradition, the moon is always connected with bliss. There's some special delight connected with the moon. So, as if peaks are high points, lit by the moon, you've experienced bliss there. Well, it's always dim, the moonlight, isn't it? It's not, I mean, you can have bright moonlight, but it's still dim compared with the daylight. And that makes it specially magical, the fact that it's dim. Suresh?
River or wing with light, whence thou hast from passing by pure through the green jungle that thy body rhythmical with the spring birds call.
Yes, reveal, tell us. And he calls her winged with light. She's come as if she's got wings with this light all around her. Whence? From where you have flown on your wings of light? Hurrying, bright colored, bright hued. You've been hurrying through this green, tangled earth. Tangled, it's when everything grows together. In the forest it may happen like that. So then it's useful if you have wings, you can fly. Otherwise, it may be difficult to pass through. And he says, your body is rhythmical. It's responding to the rhythms of the spring bird's call in the springtime when the birds are all falling in love and mating. It's a special rhythm. So that rhythm you're carrying with you. Bhavan.
The empty roses of thy hands are filled only with their own beauty and thrill of the remembered clasp, and in thee close a heavenly wear, thy firm, deep, honeyed heart, and you brimming with sweet and nectarous wine.
Yes, isn't that a lovely image? Her hands are like roses, but they're empty. They're filled only with their own beauty, but the thrill also, the remembered thrill. Somebody has held your hands, no? And within you, there's glowing a heavenly jar, a lovely vessel, which is also glowing with light. He says it's your firm, deep, honeyed heart. Honey is the symbol always of bliss, ananda, and in the form of honey it can be quite packed, no? Sometimes honey is liquid, but we can also have quite densely packed honey. So it's firm, it's so much packed with delight. And the jar is full of that, up to the brim. The brim, it's brimming over even with this sweet and nectarous wine. Wine again is the ananda, it gives the intoxication of divine delight. And this wine is sweet and it's like nectar. Nectar is the drink that gives immortality. Edita.
Thou hast not spoken with the kings of things.
Continue.
Life's glorious music rings yet to thy ear, far melodied, rapid and grand, a centaur's song, or soft as water, flashing mid the hills, or mighty as a great chant of many winds.
Thank you. So he says it's obvious that you haven't spoken with the kings of pain. What you have met is some wonderful delight. And here he begins to suggest that she has yet to experience more. He says, for now, the music of life, the dangerous music of life, perilous, full of danger, to your ear, it is still ringing, that dangerous music of life, as something wonderful. You're hearing it from a distance. When we hear things from a distance, things get melodious. If you, in the early morning, you happen to hear the hum of Pondicherry, if you were there, it wouldn't sound melodious. But because of distance, it sounds melodious, no? And that life's music is like a great river flowing swiftly, grandly, or, he says, like a centaur's song. Centaurs are creatures of the forest from Greek mythology. They are beings with the body of a man and the hind parts of a horse. So really what they represent is all the vital strength and energy, and united with the power of thought. And some of those mythological centaurs were great musicians, gurus and musicians. No? So the sound, like the sound of one of those great mythological beings. Or soft, like the sound of water plashing mid the hills. If you go into the hills, you may not see the streams, but you can hear that gentle sound of the water. Plashing is like splashing, but it's more gentle. It's a lovely, soothing sound. Or mighty as a great chant of many winds, a powerful song of the wind. In other places in the poem, Sri Aurobindo says those winds are like priests chanting some sacred mantras. So that's what life means or sounds like to Savitri. He's beginning to hint that she will have to have other experiences. So shall we read this together? Even as he sang, and rapture stole through earth-time and caught the heavens, came with a call of hoofs as of her swift heart hastening, Savitri. Her radiant tread glimmered across the floor. A happy wonder in her fathomless gaze, changed by the halo of her love she came. Her eyes rich with a shining mist of joy, as one who comes from a heavenly embassy, discharging the proud mission of her heart. One carrying the sanction of the gods to her love and its luminous eternity. She stood before her mighty Father's throne, and, eager for beauty on discovered earth, transformed and new in her heart's miracle light, saw like a rose of marvel, worshipping the fire-tinged sweetness of the Son of Heaven. He flung on her his vast immortal look. His inner gaze surrounded her with its light, and raining back knowledge from his immortal lips, he cried to her, "Who is this that comes, the bride, the flame-born, and round her illumined head pouring their lights, her hymeneal pomps move flashing about her? From what green glimmer of glades retreating into dewy silences, or half-seen verge of waters moon-betrayed, bringst thou this glory of enchanted eyes? Earth has gold-hued expanses, shadowy hills that cowl their dreaming phantom heads in night, and, guarded in a cloistral joy of woods, screened banks sink down into felicity, seized by the curved, incessant, yearning hands and ripple passion of the upgazing stream. Amid cool-lipped murmurs of its pure embrace, they lose their souls on beds of trembling reeds. And all these are mysterious presences in which some spirit's immortal bliss is felt, and they betray the earth-born heart to joy. There hast thou paused, and marvelling borne eyes unknown, or heard a voice that forced thy life to strain its rapture through thy listening soul? Or, if my thought could trust this shimmering gaze, it would say thou hast not drunk from an earthly cup, but stepping through azure curtains of the noon, thou wast surrounded on a magic verge in brighter countries than man's eyes can bear. Assailed by trooping voices of delight, and seized mid a sunlit glamour of the boughs in fairy woods, led down the gleaming slopes of Gandhamadan, where the Apsaras roam. Thy limbs have shared the sports which none has seen, and in God haunts thy human footsteps strayed. Thy mortal bosom quivered with God's speech, and thy soul answered to a word unknown. What feet of gods, what ravishing flutes of heaven have thrilled high melodies round, from near and far approaching through the soft and revelling air, which still surprised thou hearest. They have fed thy silence on some red, strange, ecstasied fruit, and thou hast trod the dim moon peaks of bliss. Reveal, O winged with light, whence thou hast flown, hastening bright-hued through the green tangled earth, thy body rhythmical with the spring bird's call. The empty roses of thy hands are filled only with their own beauty and the thrill of a remembered clasp, and in thee glows a heavenly jar, thy firm, deep-honeyed heart, new brimming with a sweet and nectarous wine. Thou hast not spoken with the kings of pain. Life's perilous music rings yet to thy ear, far melodied, rapid and grand, a centaur's song, or soft as water plashing mid the hills, or mighty as a great chant of many winds.